What can I say? These things are never so expected. We never really get used to them. So my condolences as well to Miss Alton for her loss. Tremendous loss. It's crazy when you lose anybody, but the closer they are, the more intense it tends to be. But nevertheless, we have to go forward, and we shall attempt to do that. Ms. Elton, I see your name. Is that you?
I'm sorry, we say Ms. Wilkinson?
I saw Ms. Elton come up. I was wondering if she was in the session. I saw her name come up.
Yeah, Ms. Alden, yeah, she is in attendance today.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well, welcome, Ms. Alton, and I'm glad you're able to make it despite all the things you're dealing with right now. Okay. So first things first, let me just introduce myself formally. I'm going to share something on my screen with you. Where's my share screen? Okay. And contact. Yeah. Can you guys see that information?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Samuel Wilkinson, and I will be your lecture presenter for the next 3 weeks as we seek to get some insight on risk and risk management. I'm sure you guys have no doubt about the nature of risk, why it exists and all that stuff. We're just going to try to dissect it a little bit and raise your already existing awareness, I trust, on the issues surrounding risk and how we mitigate them. So I'm going to try to just add a few more important things to what you might already know about risk and risk management. That will hopefully be helpful to you as you continue in your professional careers. Just a little background on myself. I've been with this forever. I won't say how long, that'll give away my ancient status, but it's been a long time. And I've taught many students in many courses at BIFS. And so it's my pleasure to continue to be a part of imparting information and knowledge to the students. Please take down my email address if you haven't done so already, and my cell number. If you need to reach me for any reason over the next 3 sessions, feel free. And maybe even after the sessions are over, you might still want to touch base for some reason. I am a former retail banker, Bank of Nova Scotia back in the day, a long time ago. And then I went into the financial field where I worked as a controller in a couple of places, banking, transportation, hotel. And then after that, another 20-something years in private banking. So I've been around a little while, seen a few things. So if even after your sessions are done with me, you have an issue or question, feel free. It'll be my pleasure to impart whatever I can with you young professionals. All right, everybody got that information? Yes? Silence means yes?
Yes, we got it.
Okay, great. All right, so I'll take this off the screen. Feel free again. I'm always checking my email and obviously my cell. The other thing in this class, as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to be the class to be as interactive as possible. Please feel free to raise questions anytime during the sessions. Interrupt me at any time. I don't mind. I don't care. I want you to do that. Where your questions are related to risk management or even perhaps something else, feel free to raise it, because whatever question you raise might be helpful to one of your colleagues. Okay, so don't be embarrassed, don't be afraid, let it rip in these 3 sessions that I hold. Any questions so far before I go on? No? Okay. Well, then that leaves introductions on your side. When I call your name, please say something, anything. Whoever I am, I work. The reason why I'm doing this class, I'm a Democrat. Whatever you want to say, let it rip. All right? Cartwright, is that Manuel?
Marosal.
Maricel, Maricel. Okay. Maricel, let it rip. Introduce yourself.
Okay, well, my name is Maricel Cartwright. I currently work at Sunshine Insurance. I've been there for 14 years now. I recently got a promotion, actually March 1st, from an account executive to a senior account executive. I also recently just received my diploma from the Chartered Insurance Institute of London. I got that on the 28th of February. So this week has been very exciting. And yes, yes.
Wow, wow, congratulations.
Thank you so much. So I am looking forward to my new role and gaining more experience in the insurance industry.
Sounds good to me, sounds good to me. Looks like my measly pension at NIB is not at risk. You guys are hopeful.
Yes,
Hopefully I can soon go and kick back and catch me a few goggle eyes or something while you guys get it on.
exactly.
All right, fantastic. And you doing this class because?
Well, it has always been a passion of mine, dealing with finances and helping persons create budgets and, get their finances in order. So I just wanted to have a more experienced viewpoint of how I need to go about doing that, as opposed to just doing it, just as a personal hobby.
Indeed, indeed. And certainly from what I gather from the modules that you guys have and will be covering, any bits and pieces of information will be very helpful, especially in your field.
Definitely.
Managing people and their affairs and their finances through the insurance industry, which of course we all know is a very huge and necessary evil. Sorry, I'm just being facetious. We all
I
need
get that a lot.
I know.
Yes.
But yeah, we all need to be covered because life is so terribly unpredictable.
Exactly.
By all means, by all means. So welcome aboard, Marisol.
Thank you.
Fantastic job so far. Keep it going.
Thank you.
Someone kick back. Okay. Paula Hilaire, is it? Hilaire. Paula, did I say that right?
Good morning, everyone. It's Hilaire.
Hilaire. Okay, Paula. Introduce yourself.
My name is Paula Hilaire. I currently work at CIFP, Kalina Financial Advisors Limited.
Yes.
I've been there for a little over 3 years.
Okay.
I work in the settlements department.
Oh, settlements. I wonder what happens there. For the sake of your colleagues, what does settlements mean to you? Because we have divorce settlements and we have all kinds of other settlements. What is settlements for you?
So after a trade is executed, my job is to ensure that the funds are allocated to the right parties. And so I have to ensure that the monies go where they're supposed to go and the shares go to the new registered clients.
Indeed. That kind of settlement. Big responsibility, Paula. For sure. Do you enjoy that work?
So far, yeah.
So far,
Coming from prior to that, I worked in a back office for a small offshore bank.
okay.
So it's pretty much different now.
Yeah, it's pretty much different. Not only the job, but so is the environment, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. I won't tell you how I know that for a fact, but definitely. And you doing CIFT because FP because
I've always had a interest with when it came to financial management. And I think in our community, financial literacy is something that we really need. So it's really something I'm doing personally for me,
Indeed.
so I can see how much I could assist in my circle.
Oh, definitely. This kind of information is always going to be useful. It's like accounting. It always will find you somewhere, either personally, professionally, or both. So you're definitely not on the wrong ship. Okay, welcome aboard. Welcome
Thank
aboard.
you.
Okay, good stuff. Sophia Major Johnson. Sophia? Did I say that right, Sophia?
Yes, you did.
Oh,
Good,
got it. Okay, Sophia, introduce
good
yourself.
morning.
Morning.
Hi, I'm Sophia Johnson Major. I am currently the deputy head of operations at Britannia Security Limited, Britannia Securities Limited. I've been in the private banking industry for almost 20 years.
Wow.
So, but and my reason for doing this course is because on a personal level, I do provide some financial consulting to persons, or money management tips to persons that require, that ask about budgeting and savings and investing. And I'm taking this course so that I can build my knowledge base and also provide, some more professional information to those persons as to how to save and budget and, make it on their financial journey.
Absolutely.
Yes.
No, those are all perfect reasons, and I'm sure that you will um, have no remorse by the end of the program. There's always a whole lot of stuff we can take out of it. I'm sure you've seen that already to put into your repertoire. And
Yes.
if you need it, you access it and do your thing. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome aboard. I'll say this, it's interesting thing about learning and education. We say it's a lifelong thing, and that's true. But I know that a couple of years ago, I was working for an offshore bank, and for some strange reason, they decided that I was working there as the assistant managing director, and they decided that me and my boss, the managing director, should do the Series 7. Anybody knows what the Series 7 program is? Ever heard about the Series 7?
Yes.
Yeah, that's stinky exam. If you've never heard about Series 7, you should look at it out of curiosity. You might be interested in that torture as well, but that's for you guys. Anyway, they decided that we should do the Series 7 exam, and I'm like, man, I've written enough examinations in my life, and besides, I'm an old guy now. What am I doing that for? But for some reason, they insisted. I don't know. They must be torturing Bahamians as usual. Anyway, so I get the big old textbook that they give you for this 6-hour exam. And then I go into Florida to write the examination. When I walked into the room, all the young teeny boppers between 19 and 25 or 30, they looked at me like maybe this is the invigilator. He could not be in here to write this examination. And imagine when I walked into my booth with salt and pepper here, they must have thought, what the hell's going on with this guy? Okay. I say that only to say that whatever information that you gather along the way can only be of great benefit to you. So do not feel you're wasting your time and your money. I believe I'm qualified to say that for a fact. I've already been there, done that. As I mentioned, I worked practically everywhere you can imagine. I don't know the hell why. I should have just gone one place and sat down. But anyway, I have no regrets. So you guys are definitely on the right track. All right, Trini Kelly, are you there?
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Yes, good morning. Good morning. Introduce yourself, Trinique.
My name is Shireen Kelly, and I've been working at Credit Suisse for the last 5 years
Okay.
and trade settlements as well, back office. And my reason for taking this course is generally to get a better understanding of the financial field and be able to use any additional information I've gained, both professionally with money management and any way that I can use it personally from in my day-to-day life.
No question, no question. As I said, you'll find that you'll be able to use it for both. The time not might come, it will come. All you need to do is decide which of the information you need, when and why, but it certainly will always be of value to you. Okay, so welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Okay, Benitra Lockhart, are you there? Okay, Benitra is not here yet. Dimitri, are you there? Maki? Okay, Dimitri is not there yet. I see Candace is there. So I'll just put a
Good.
tick. Yeah, Candace.
Yeah, good morning to all.
Good morning. I didn't want to insist, but I'm happy you jumped the gun. Good morning. How are you holding up, Candace?
Not good. So please excuse me today.
You are absolutely excused. Okay?
Yes.
You
But
just hang in there and hang in there. That's all I'm gonna say. And when I come up from this class, I'm going up to my wife and tell her you gotta continue to be good to me. Doggone it. I won't tell you how long I've been married. It's a long time. So I understand completely, Candace. Okay? Completely. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Burnett Saunders. Okay, Burnett is not here yet. Is there anybody's name I didn't call? Oh, so I see Burnett. Burnett, you're muted?
Sorry, I was trying to get my mute,
Okay,
trying to
Burnett.
be unmuted.
Yeah, introduce yourself.
My name is Bonnet Saunders. I work in trust and private banking. I'm interested in taking this course because I just did the credit risk management. And I said, why not just do something that would be able to help me build my skills to assist my clients regarding financial planning.
Absolutely, because they always need it somewhere.
Yes.
For sure. All right, good stuff, Monique. Well, welcome aboard. You're definitely in the right place. Okay. Is anybody's name I didn't call? Fantastic. Remember, my classes are interactive. As far as I'm concerned, what does that mean? That means that you can say anything you want, so to speak. Raise any questions you want. Give us any case studies you want. Raise any questions about something you might see in your environment without divulging any names and places that might provoke the thoughts of others in the class that might be helpful in terms of your experiences. Anything goes within reason in my session. So please feel free, okay, to talk, chat, and throw out your thoughts. All right. So I noticed in module 1 that you guys did something called financial situation analysis. What in the world was that, anyone? Financial situation analysis. What in the world was that? What was that about? You don't need to be perfect. Just throw anything out. Throw out anything you remember. I don't expect anything perfect answers. Just let it rip.
From what I remember, it was about the framework, like assessment of your financial situation. like the KYC, not mine, I mean the client's KYC,
Indeed,
analyzing, I guess, their financial situation so that you can better assist them.
indeed, indeed. And when we talk about client KYC, what are we talking about? Well, first of all, what does KYC mean?
Know your customer.
Absolutely. I know your customer is a very, very important current due diligence requirement by law these days in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and around the world. I'm sure some of you have heard about the OECD, yes? I hope.
Yes, yes.
And if you've heard about the OECD, then you've heard about the FATF.
Definitely.
I hope so. And if you've heard about the FATF, you've heard about the CIFP.
Most definitely with that one.
Indeed. In case I didn't mention it, I did spend over 20 years in compliance myself, along with the other crazy stuff in senior management and private banking, all the whole 9 crazy yards. Believe it or not, in my lifetime, I've worked for a French Canadian private bank. I have worked for a Brazilian private bank. I've worked for a Filipino private bank, and so on. And so there are not too many things that I haven't seen. I don't know what the heck is going on. Okay, so yeah, those are very key aspects of the KYC process and the management of clients and who they are and what they're doing and why they're opening up facilities in your financial institution and all this other good stuff. So this, yeah, financial situations would look at these kinds of things. And certainly if you're a financial planner of any kind or anybody who's responsible for compliance responsibilities, which by the way is everybody, whether you're a compliance officer or not. I hope you know that by now. Compliance is everybody's job. You can't say, well, it's the compliance officer's job, but the MLRO's job. What does MLRO mean, anyone? What does MLRO mean?
Money laundering report officer?
Yes. And what is their job in the Bahamas and around the world? In your financial institutions?
No. They're the liaison between the local regulatory body and the company.
They are. And as liaison, what are they expected to do?
Report any funny business.
Couldn't put it better myself. Any funny, suspicious transactions that may be going on in the financial institution, whether it's reported to them by a member of staff or whether they recognize it themselves, they have a legal responsibility to report it to whom? Where do you report this responsibility legally? By law?
Securities Commission?
I wish, but that's a good start.
FIU.
Is it the FIU?
Oh, the FIU. What does that mean?
It's a financial intelligence unit?
Yes, yes. Now, the reason why I'm burdening you with these little initial questions, because I just want you to know that when you set out to get information and education, sometimes if you run into the right source, you learn all kinds of interesting other things, which is what makes learning interesting if you're interested. That's just the old lecture professional in me. That's my point. But yeah, if you're an MLRO, you're to take suspicious transactions report from employees or anybody else in the organization and report them to the FIU. Once somebody is suspicious and they report it, you are mandated by law to report it. If you don't report it and you discover that you should have and didn't, you could be prosecuted. Did you know that? I hope every MLRO knows that. What about insurance companies? Should there be an MLRO in an insurance company? Ms. Sunshine? Should there
Yes,
be
most
an MLRO?
definitely.
Do you guys have one?
No, we don't.
No, I'm not surprised. And the reason why I say I'm not surprised, because a lot of organizations either still don't seem to know, or they act like they don't know. And that is another matter. But welcome to the world of learning. And all of this comes up into the opening salvo on module 1, financial situation analysis. All of these things are interconnected, as you'll see with everything else you do this semester in this particular course and many other courses. They're all interconnected somehow. Okay? And so just for your information, because information is an interesting thing. If an entity is a financial institution, it is required to have an MLRO. That's a very current and important phenomenon that is still required, not only in the Commonwealth, not only in the Caribbean, but around the world. Okay. All right. Good stuff. Did you guys do the SWOT analysis? SWOT.
No, we didn't.
No? Anybody remembers doing SWOT? Ever heard the expression SWOT? No?
We did, well, I did SWOT, but not, I don't think we touched on it in the first module.
What about the second module?
No.
Wouldn't have done it in the second module either, because the second module focused on what? What was the focus
Client
of
relationship.
Client relationship
that
skills.
client relationships? Why is that important to the CIFP? Relationships. Anyone? Why are client relationships important to the CIFP?
I guess with having an idea or understanding of the stability of the customers with business that we may be potentially getting involved in. So we'll have an understanding of, in the case of with the SWOT analysis, maybe that we didn't really touch on in that chapter, but the strengths and weaknesses, what can be improved for better performance or better profit.
Yeah, I like how you tied it in, because again, that just confirms the interconnectivity. Certainly, if you are a financial planner and giving advice to clients, how to interact with clients is obviously an important part of your job. Understanding what their needs are and responding to those needs for each and every client is an important part of your job. Remember, it's just like if you go on a date with 5 guys or girls, they look like guys and girls, but they're not the same. They only have similar characteristics, but each and every one of them is a completely different person. Clients are like that. So you cannot use a one thing fits all thing for clients. And so these client relationship discussions are designed, hopefully, to give you the tools that you need to relate to each and every one of your clients as you deal with them. Okay. Of course, client business can be anywhere from $1,000 to millions of dollars. Suffice it to say that the task of dealing with clients properly and efficiently is always a critical issue. Even though you may not get that feeling when you walk into a typical financial institution in the Bahamas today. Everybody seems like the act oftentimes that the client is an interruption to the business that they're doing inside. Is the client an interruption, anyone?
Not at all, Carol.
Who's the most important thing to any organization?
The customer.
Right.
Always, no matter how sophisticated our technology gets. Somehow in the 21st century, we seem to have forgotten that the customer is still the most important thing. All too often we walk into organizations and they treat customers like, anybody has an adjective for that? They treat customers like, I don't want to say it, I want one of you say
The shirt.
it. Yeah, and she's still being polite, okay? Plus some other things. And we need to go back to basics in terms of module 2, see? Customer relationships. Go back to basics. When customers show up, I don't care how we feel, we have to treat them like the kings and queens that they are, because without them, where the hell would we be? Would we be there? No. How about that for a change still? All right. So welcome to module 2. These things are all interconnected. That's the whole point. All right. And so with that then, little blah, 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 we can now move into the next part of CIFT, which is what we will be talking about for the next 3 weeks, risk management. Now, risk management is a current talking topic everywhere you go. If you attend seminars and workshops and hopefully company meetings, somebody's talking about risk and risk management and risk mitigation somewhere. Webinars are flooded with risk management discussions. And the reason for that is the risk that organizations face every day happens to be growing. Compliance officers and MLROs in particular are dealing with all kinds of risk issues all the time that face their organizations. Persons are flooded with legislations and regulations and rules and international agreements and fights with the FATF and all these people about how to manage risk in a particular company or jurisdiction or country for that matter. Okay? So we're going to look at some of those risk positions and see what kinds of things we should be thinking about when we come across risk issues. And one of the key things to mitigate against risk is the work that Ms. Sunshine does, called insurance. And somewhere along the way, we'll see that there are many types of insurances that are designed really to mitigate or reduce risk. Okay? Before we begin, can somebody come up with a quick and dirty definition of what you think risk is? What do you think risk is? By the way, we're in module 3. The one with the truck that's sitting precariously on a piece of wood. Do you see that? Everybody see that? Yeah. Truck?
Yes,
I just thought I'd put that there to remind people of the risk people continue to take for some strange reason. Is there anybody under that truck?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Can somebody tell me what the hell is he doing under there?
Looks like he's trying to fix something.
Yeah, looks that way. And what is holding up the truck?
Two pieces of 2x4.
Yeah, 2 pieces of 2x4. What is the risk that the wood could collapse?
Very high.
Yeah.
Very high. Or somebody, it may not collapse, somebody might come by and just kick it out the way. See my point? Like somebody who does not like him, they'll just pass by and say, this is my chance, and kick it out of the way. So the point I'm making here is some risk issues, we actually go in with our eyes open. We can see what the dangers are, and yet we proceed to take the risk for some reason. Interesting thing about human nature. We know that speeding, if it results in a crash, will likely end your life or cripple us for life. Yet we continue to do what, class? Anybody in the class? We continue to?
Can you repeat that, please?
We know that speeding typically results in death or major damage if there's a crash, yet we continue to?
Speed?
Yeah, why? Why do we take the risk of speeding when we know what the consequences are?
Because we don't think it's going to happen to us.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the sneaky thing about risk. It's just like when the devil went to Eve in the garden and said, Evelyn, you're not going to really die if you bite the fruit. See? Yeah, we always think it's not going to happen to us. And that's the problem with risk, because risk issues can happen to anyone. We just keep fooling ourselves thinking it won't happen to us until it finally happens to us. And then we decide, oh, if only I had. Okay? Yeah. So can somebody give us a quick and dirty definition of risk? What is risk?
Exposing yourself or being exposed to some sort of danger.
Absolutely. Right along the line with the speeding. Okay? Exposing ourselves, whether individually or a company or country, to danger. Wow. That's a good one. There are a lot of variations, but that's one of the better ones. Whether it's physical danger, financial danger, or otherwise. That's the nature of risk. And since we all live in a risk environment, we cannot ever completely mitigate or get rid of it. All we can do is try to take steps to minimize and reduce it. And really, that's going to be the core of our discussion. What kind of risks are out there, and what kinds of things should we be thinking about to minimize or reduce those risks? Okay? Those of us who seek wisdom will certainly take care to try to reduce and minimize risk. But there always seems to be a gang of persons who want to take the big risk. Occasionally you get lucky. All too often, though, too many people are not so fortunate and they suffer the consequences. And when I say people, I'm talking about individuals and entities. We're thinking primarily entities for the sake of our class, but don't forget, we're talking about entities, people, and countries everywhere. Okay. All right. What is the risk of Ukraine having Russia next door? Anyone? What is the risk of Ukraine having Russia next door? Is there any risk at all? If you think there's no risk, just say there's no risk, Mr. Wilkinson.
I'm not sure. Is it in regards to oil? Because they have the oil supply or something?
Why not? See,
Oh,
sometimes why not? It could be because they have oil. It could be because they're the world's #3 provider of food in terms of grain in the world. It could
Oh.
be a number of those things. See my point? And who wants it?
Russia.
Russia. Is war the only way for them to get it? No. All they have to do is what? Buy it.
Mhm.
But the Russians have decided they don't want to buy it. They want to.
Take
Or-
it.
So yeah, so I'll take it. See, it's like a guy who doesn't want to ask a girl on the date. Here's what he do. Here's what he does. Instead of asking her on a date, he sneaks up on her, pounces on her, and bloody rapes her. See, that kind of foolishness. How about that? So, welcome to the, I know that's a graphic picture of risk, but it is real and it's occurring as we speak. I just want you to know that the risk that we're talking about is not just the risk your organizations face in terms of not reporting suspicious transactions, not getting insurance coverage on the assets of the firm, not covering the board and others from personnel risk or whatever the case might be, not getting indemnity insurance. These are all important risk issues, but they're not the only ones. There are all kinds of other kinds of risks. Risk that your top employee who you train to do all kinds of blah 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 for the firm resigns. And not only do they resign and go to the competition. All kinds of risks, some that we don't even think about, but they are. And they all have names. Okay? So, just in case you haven't thought about some of those kinds of things, I just thought I'd throw them out while we get into our discussion surrounding the issue of risk. Now, a lot of people think that risk is a new discipline. It is not. It has just become more prominent in our discussions in the last couple of years. And so suddenly, because of OECD, FATF, CFATF, and those guys, they've brought it to the forefront and now made it part of the recommendations that they've imposed on countries around the world, including the Bahamas. And so now everybody is talking about risk management as if it's something new. It's nothing new. We have just taken it off the shelf, polished it, and now we're starting to make a big stink about it. Okay, and so here we go. Somebody said earlier that risk management involves not taking certain precautions and running into danger. That is definitely the definition you want to keep in mind. If you look further, you'll find variations of that, but they all boil down to some aspect of that. Okay? So what kinds of questions should people involved in risk be thinking about? And interestingly enough, risk is something like compliance. Wherever we run the risk department, we're responsible for risk in our firms and our countries, whatever the case might be. At the end of the day, everybody's individually responsible for dealing with risk as well, as we're responsible for reporting suspicious transactions and blowing the whistle on wicked things that are going on in the firm. By the way, let me just be the devil's advocate since we're talking about risk. The devil's advocate. Anybody knows what that means? The devil's advocate? What do I mean by the devil's advocate?
You're here coming up with the worst case scenario.
Say it one more time for your colleagues.
So you're thinking of the worst case scenario.
Yeah, the worst case scenario in situations. And suffice it to say that any discussion about risk that doesn't involve devil advocacy is a delusion for sure. Okay? It's important when we're talking about risk to go from the simplest of circumstances to the most difficult and even sometimes unbelievable of circumstances. Because if it can happen, it is likely to happen. That is a fact. Okay? So, anybody who's sitting down to discuss risk at any level, the bottom of the firm to the top, must consider what risk management involves, must consider how we should conduct risk management activities, and why we even deal with risk management issues to begin with. Now, you'll notice right under that diagram, I made some notes there about risk management and risk terminology. Okay? And it is important that when we talk about risk, whatever capacity we discuss it, we are all on the same page when it comes to terminology, when it comes to process, when it comes to how we will manage this risk, and certainly what the objectives are for the risk management process. One of the reasons why firms and countries and others have problems with managing risk is that we have this tendency to manage risk in a silo. Everybody have their own little risk thing going on, from their own individual perspective to their own little group perspective, to their own little board perspective, to their own little power play perspective. And so nobody can come together as a unit and agree on common terminology, common processes, common management perspectives and objectives. And as usual, whenever you can come to agree on commonalities, we always have confusion. Example, by the way, is anybody in this class married?
Yes.
Okay, one brave soul.
Yes, yes.
All right, well, fantastic. Welcome aboard. Misery loves company. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Somebody has to be the devil's advocate. There's nothing wrong with getting married. Okay, it's always folk don't want to make the adjustments they need to make to be and stay married. That's the problem. There's nothing wrong with being married at all. Just like risk management, we get married and we start operating in silos. You do what you want to do, I'll do what I want to do. I love my family more than I love you. I love my job more than I love you. I love my, see, and then we get everything gets mixed up, just like mismanaging risk management. And then the whole thing becomes a risk issue. All right, just trying to let you see that this thing, risk, is everywhere, not only in the firms that you work for. So if you haven't thought about it before, when you go back to your jobs, for example, you might want to take a moment and say, what kinds of risk exist in this bloody firm that I work for? And who's responsible for securing and mitigating those risks? And are they in fact doing it? And if they're not, am I bold enough to raise it? Because in some organizations, raising what is wrong is a risk as well, true or false?
Very true.
True, true.
Very true indeed. If you don't believe me, give it a shot. I give it a shot many times throughout the decades of work, and every time I touched something that was wrong to fix it, they said they want to fix it. When I said, okay, I'll fix it. The minute you set out to fix it, all hell breaks loose. Like Rami used to say, then everybody get vexed with you and start doing strange things. And so when you decide to fix things in any organization, you have to be bold and be ready to take on the risk of fixing. I know, I don't have that in my notes. Remember, academic stuff don't have the real life stuff all the time. It just tells you stuff around it and hope that you find a way to apply it. How is that? All right. So as I said earlier, risk management is not just company. Risk management involves individuals, involves countries, involves jurisdiction, involves everything. Okay? And so if you notice in that little box, I think it's a green box if I'm not mistaken, there are a couple of definitions for risk. Can somebody read those three definitions? Is it 1, 2, 3? Yeah. Can somebody just read them, the three definitions for risk?
Risk can be defined as the combination of the probability of an event and its consequences. Risk management is increasingly recognized as being concerned with both positive and negative aspects of risk. Therefore, this standard considered risk from both perspectives.
Hmm?
In the safety field, it is generally recognized that consequences are only negative and therefore the management of safety risk is focused on prevention and mitigation of harm.
Thank you very much. So in addition to the description that we got initially from, I think that was, who told us that? Was that you, Maricel? The initial description of risk, at least the danger. Now we have three other perspectives, and one of them includes a safety field. Who would have thought that risk was connected to safety? But it is, in terms of mitigation and prevention. Okay? And then also in terms of positive and negative impacts and perspectives. So all of a sudden, the issue of risk is not just one-dimensional now. It's multi-dimensional. Okay? I remember when my youngest son was going off to university a couple of years ago. Of course, being his father, I said to him, Dante, you're going to university, and in the university there are lots of girls. Anybody knows why I said that? Any guys in this room, by the way? Any guys in this room? No. Okay, ladies, just let it rip. Anybody knows why I said that? Dante, there are a lot of girls in university. Why did I tell him that?
I didn't want him to be distracted.
Aha, there's a risk of distraction and not focusing on his studies. Okay. Well, at least you went on to the milder, calmer risk. What's the other risk that there are girls? Girls?
Get one of them pregnant.
I kissed my foot. Exactly. Get one of them pregnant. And then all of a sudden, he's a dad in school with no money and no job, which means that half people will then have to take on the responsibility of their baby, and then see, it gets really messed up. See, this is the problem with risk. This is the problem with risk. So, that being the case, like get pregnant. What do you think I told him in order to mitigate that risk? Anybody can make a guess? How do you mitigate against the risk of her getting pregnant? See, that's the problem with risk. People don't think about it until after they're stuck, organization-wise and otherwise. What do you think I told them, class?
Abstain or use protection.
Thank you. Abstain, which is a funny word for 2019. Abstain or use protection. See, that's how you mitigate. Suppose she says, oh, Dante, you don't have to worry, I'm on the pill. Should he say, okay, and then don't use protection? What is the risk of that?
Tell him the devil is a liar.
Thank you. I love it. Tell her the devil is a liar. You want me to take your word, Suzette? And what part of the US are you from, or the world? Like, why should I take your word? Who the hell are you for me to take your word? Thank you very much for that, Suzette, but I'm mitigating against risk. I was listening to one of my father's lectures, and I think I'll just put this on anyway, as a precaution. Now, class, let me show you the problem with risk. And again, this is a personal example, but it's the same thing for organizations and countries. Same problem. When he puts on the mitigator, the risk mitigator, and I'm sure you all know what that is, what other risk is that protecting him from other than an unwanted pregnancy?
STDs.
Kiss my foot. And if only it was a regular STD that you could take a shot, but there's some STDs that don't go away, do they? So not only are you protecting from a regular STD that you can quote unquote fix, but also from an STD that you may not ever be able to fix, and one that can ultimately take your, I want one of you to say it, ultimately take your,
Life.
okay. I know, it stinks. But just like anything else, if firms don't mitigate against risk, it'll ultimately cause the destruction of the firm, like Enron. Anybody ever heard about Enron?
Yes.
Oh, what do you remember from the Enron story? For your colleagues who never heard about Enron, what do
I
you
just
remember?
remember, I don't know what, I can't remember what actually happened. I remember they went around shredding a lot of papers, trying to get rid of evidence. I remember
Yeah,
that.
you remember that crazy part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on the right track. Enron was taking a lot of risks. Enron was a multi-billion-dollar firm, one of the largest, if not the largest in the United States back in the day, some 20 years ago. Enron was so big that it thought it can do anything it wanted to do, just like people who think they're all that in the bag of bricks. They think they can do anything they feel like doing and get away with it. Enron was cooking the financial records. Enron was changing numbers in the financial statements. Enron was lying about its financial affairs. Enron was lying about its business and off-balance sheet transactions. By the way, I happen to be an accountant by profession as well, so I'm very comfortable with this crazy stuff that these crazy companies do. Okay? And they thought they were so big, multi-billion dollars in assets, that they could get away with it. Well, they didn't get away with it. They took the risk, they were discovered, and they collapsed into nothing. They did not come back from it. They collapsed and never recovered. People who put in 20, 30, 40 years of pensions, who worked there all those years, lost everything. Some of the employees committed suicide. They couldn't live with the loss. It was tragic. All because a couple of bastards at the top decided that they would ignore the risk management rules and be the crooked, doggone, white-collar criminals that they continue to be. I know, I made it sound dramatic. I did it that way so maybe you'll remember going forward, in case you run into such a thing, okay? And in case you didn't know it, the real criminals are not at the bottom of the organization taking $10 out of petty cash for gas and lunch money for their children. The real criminals are where? Anyone?
At the
Don't
top,
be bashful. Are they where?
at the top.
At the TOP. Always. If it's a country, at the top. The prime ministers and presidents and all their connected doggone gang. If it's on an organizational wide, it's the board of directors and senior management and the gang at the top. If it's the church, it's the flicking bishop and the gang at the top, and the pope, whoever they are. Seems to be the real issues, risk and other eyes are becoming the real ones that really matter. Seem to occur at the top. That is interesting. And if I open any eyes today on our discussion on risk, I hope it was one set of eyes. Because you never know when you might run into such a thing as, wait a minute, this is the same bloody thing Mr. Wilkinson mentioned. What am I going to do? Should I do anything? Should I tell anyone? If they say something, they're going to fire me, or whatever the case might be. All of us may have to face it one way or the other, or you may actually end up being sitting on a board and watching the board members do some funny stuff. Say, wait a minute, didn't I do a course back in the day and that Mr. Wilkinson said that this happens? What do I do? Now I'm at the top. Should I join them or kiss my foot? Well, I know that's not in the notes, but remember, The academic stuff only tells you what it ought to be, doesn't have all the gory details sometimes. Okay, you have to kind of fill in the blanks. So I'm just throwing some things in case you're confronted. You will have to make a moral, ethical, and other decision about how to manage and mitigate the risk of the situation you are in. How's that? All right. Now, I also gave you some other points in addition to the different definitions of risk. Notice we thought risk was just avoiding danger, but risk has positive and negative consequences. Risk have safety measures as well. Then further down, you'll see I have a few other points on risk management. Okay, can somebody read those points under risk management? Anyone beginning the process whereby? Don't be bashful, let it rip. Because one day one of you may be a compliance officer or some risk manager or some such person or just an employee, deputy manager or something, and you have to go to the board and present some issues that are not right in your firm. And I can assure you, if you're going to do that successfully, you have to be bold or you have to be quiet. Which do we choose? Okay, anyone? Can you just read those notes on the risk management?
The process, oh, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
The process whereby organizations methodically address their risks. The focus of good risk management is the identification and treatment of risk. Risk management should be a continuous and developing process which runs throughout the organization's strategy and implementation of that risk. It should address methodically all the risks surrounding organizations' activities, past, present, and future. It must be integrated into the culture of the organization with an effective policy and a program led by most senior management.
Now, students, the truth is, you see those points that she just read? Technically, I can say thank you very much. The semester's over for risk management. Wait for module 4. Because everything concerning risk management is summarized in these points that she read. And if firms would only take some aspect of these, not all of them, and actually set out to implement them, they will discover that their lives would be considerably easier. If individuals were to take some of these points and apply some of them, they discover that their lives would be easier. If countries would take some of these points and apply them, they would discover that their lives would be easier. If churches would take some of these points and apply them properly, they will discover that their lives and the lives of their congregants even would be easier. For some strange reason, people believe that because an organization is a church or a charity, that they do not have risk issues. Is that true, anyone? Because it's a church or charity, does that mean they're free of risk?
No, you
No, they're not. Because whether it's a church or charity, they're still run by?
people, customers.
Yeah, people.
Mhm.
And wherever we are, there's always the potential for something to go wrong. A lot of charities collect money to help the poor and underprivileged and distraught, and many of them do. But many people who run charities are not always doing the right thing. Did you know that? Huh? Did you know that?
Yes, Mr. Wilkinson, like the one that the PM just was talking about.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You guys actually read the paper. That's good. That's good. Absolutely. Absolutely. And all before that, what he's talking about is nothing new. He's just like making it sound like it's new. There's nothing new because there's nothing new under the sun. actually. But yeah, that's an example. Because a church is a church doesn't mean that everything going on in the church is honest and ethical and fair and moral. Hell no. I don't care what denomination it is. There's always the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so individually, when we look at these risk issues, we have to determine whatever the organization is, how we are going to deal with it on an individual basis. Yeah. My. Yeah. So how should we deal with risk management? We should address it methodically. See? Methodically, step by step, not helter-skelter. Identify what the risks are. One of the reasons why people who are even married oftentimes can't resolve their problems because they don't really deal with the real truth of the matter. Many organizations don't pick up the real problems because of politics in the organization or who's going to be impacted or their friend or their buddy or their family member or somebody is going to feel the effects of correcting the problem. And so rather than fix it, we leave it. So what if my brother-in-law is a thief? Don't report him. That's my brother. Is that the position we should take as a family, folks? Because that's your brother, you shouldn't report if he's a thief? Is that the correct position?
Absolutely not.
No, it isn't. If somebody works in the firm and that's your friend, your family member, your boyfriend, whatever it is, colleague, and they do something wrong, does that mean you should ignore it? Act like it's not happening?
No.
No, not really.
No.
Unfortunately, we get stuck somewhere with it, and that's why we have all these things happening and we can't mitigate the risk. We can't fix things. We can't reduce the risk because we have all these other relational things that get in the way. If I'm reminding you how difficult it is to fix risk issues, that's my whole point. And it's not, see, if you learn about a debit and a credit, you only need it if you're an accountant, but most of the time. The problem with risk is you always need it no matter what your job is. So there's no hiding from it. If you're not an accountant, say, I'm not an accountant, and then you go walk away, find the accountant. The problem with risk is you can't say, I'm not a part of the risk, because everybody's a part of the risk. Wow. The notes don't say that directly, but that's ultimately what it boils down to. Identify the risk and then treat it. See? So if you get married, instead of fighting with each other all the time, tell your spouse the truth. Thomas, I don't love you. I think we should divorce. At least it's better than hanging around and making each other miserable. That's an extreme. I don't really mean that's always the case, but sometimes it's the case. The point I'm making is whatever the issue that's presenting the risk, we have to identify it, and because you can't treat what you don't identify. Problem is sometimes what we identify is not the problem, it's a symptom. And so oftentimes we're treating symptoms with risk. Wow. Who would have thought all this crap was involved in risk management? Thought it was just ticking the box and moving on. But it's not. That's the problem. A lot of people are ticking the box for risk management. Insurance in place? Yes, tick. The board is making minutes? Yes, tick. We're conducting KYC on incoming clients? Yes, tick the box. Does that cover all our risk? Yes, all the boxes are ticked. I can assure you that does not cover all of your risk. And hopefully by the time you leave my sessions, you'll understand that completely. Also, she said in point number 3 that the risk management is never ending, it's continuous. You have to continuously looking for ways to identify and treat risk issues. And whatever strategies you need to put in place to implement risk mitigation issues, you have to do that as a firm. For example, if you walk into a company and only one third person signs off and approves transactions, That is a major risk issue. True or false?
True.
Absolutely. And then you say to somebody, shouldn't, excuse me, Mrs. Jones, shouldn't two or more people be signing off on approving these? And then she said, we don't need anybody else. I'm signing off and the matter is closed. Any other questions, doggone Maricel? And then they start acting like they're threatening you. Like if you ask another question, they'll fire you. So we panic and we just go back into our corner while somebody continues to violate the internal control rules and ultimately start stealing money and involved in fraud and trying to keep everybody quiet by intimidating them. And all that does to risk is increase or decrease it, anyone?
Increase.
Absolutely. Problem when risk increases, everybody eventually gets hurt. That's the problem with risk increase. Even if you're not responsible for the risk. If you select the wrong government, everybody suffers. If you select the wrong leader in anything, everybody suffers. The innocent suffers with the guilty. That's the problem when we do not properly mitigate risk. If there are no fire extinguishers in their fire, maybe everybody will get burnt up. If only there was one fire extinguisher, then you could have avoided it, perhaps. See? That's the crazy thing about risk. It doesn't only impact the person who's creating the risk. Ah, goodness. Question for you guys. Question. Have any of you seen a risk management policy in your firm? Don't be bashful.
Yes, I have.
You saw one?
Yes.
Unbelievable, Sophia. You must be an exception to the rule.
But it's kind of needed in
It's
our
kind-
line of work.
Say it again?
It's kind of needed in the offshore banking field.
Yeah, it is. It's part of the requirement that inspectors ask for when they come to do their on-site examinations. Yeah, that's true. But you know, sometimes we create a policy and then what do we do with it, Sophia?
Put it on the shelf.
You know, at least you're honest about it. Some people don't want to be honest. Yes. Yeah. And so when the regulators come and say, yeah, we have it, it's over there. We gonna get it. But nobody knows what's in it, nobody cares. How often do you discuss any risk management issues that's in the policy in a staff meeting?
When someone leaves.
Yeah, yeah. You guys know the deal. Okay. Yeah, so welcome to the real world. Okay, what can I say? So, and therein lies the problem. The very fact that some companies have no policy, others have a policy that's gathering dust, others don't hear anything about the policy until somebody leaves, and others have never heard about the policy ever. And some of them work for the firm for years. Imagine that.
Mr. Wilkinson, I have a question. Why sometimes the companies, like Ms. Major said that they would put it on the shelf. I think sometimes people hide the policy from the employees. Why is that?
Who else I got? Manette.
Yes.
Doggone, I'm so happy to see that we still have young professionals who are asking profound questions. Yes, sometimes, Vanette, believe it or not, and others in this class, they are, quote unquote, hiding the policy. They don't flicking want you to know what's in it. Imagine that. It's for you, but
Yeah.
nobody talks about it. Nobody insists that you look at it. Nobody discusses any tenets of it in meetings. Nothing. It's almost as if they're hiding it from you. So that whatever they tell you, you just do what they say rather than do what is correct. Wow.
So
There
true.
Okay, so those of you who are bold enough to consider her question and my answer, a word to the wise is sufficient. You must individually decide how you will pursue that matter. But yes, you're right, Bonnet. Sometimes they're either hiding it or they sure as hell appear to be hiding it. Unfortunately, in both cases. Which reminds me, back in the day, on more than one occasion, but I'll pick this one. Back in the day when I was a credit manager at Bank of Nova Scotia, that's a long time ago. An issue came up, personnel issue, and I wrote to the manager of the branch. I said, blah, blah, blah is the case. According to the policy, I should be paid overtime, this and that, for this and that. Of course, the branch manager, as usual, they do what they want to do. They pay the people who are their friends, who they like, and then they avoid and just totally ignore those who they decide that they're going to ignore for whatever reason. So he writes me back and said, no, we will not be doing that. So, Vonette, here's what I did. I'm 25 years old. Okay? I guess that kind of pissed them off as well. I went to the Bank of Nova Scotia's manual, see that? The policy, and found the appropriate clicking policy. I sat down at my desk at work, where I worked late all too often anyway in those days. And I wrote head office in Canada and quoted the policy. I said, according to Bank of Nova Scotia's policy, this should be done, this should be done, this should be done. I've been refused by the branch manager here in the Bahamas. Within 24 hours, senior management in Canada wrote the manager of the branch to our head office downtown and said, Mr. Branch Manager, pay Mr. Wilkinson today. Suffice it to say, I was on their hit list. Well, some people don't call it a hit list, they call it that other list. But I was on the hit list from then on because they didn't like the fact that I actually used the manual that they said was created for us as staff members. Imagine that. So there is risk involved. So I didn't get certain increases. I didn't get certain because they started playing their games with it. Because they were angry because I used the manual that was created for us. And head office wrote them and told them, you're wrong. Pay that youngster today. Of course, there are consequences for doing even the right thing. But we all have to choose which route we're going to take. Okay? No textbook can do it, nor can I. I can only throw some stuff out and say a word to the wise is. Anybody knows what the other word is?
Sufficient.
Sufficient.
Sufficient. What can I say? All right. So some food for thought as we move on. Now, next, we have to consider in the organization that there are two types of risks. What are they, anyone? Two types of risk factors. What are they?
Internal and external.
Internal and external risks. Okay. What are some examples of external risk? Sorry? External risks. What are some examples?
I have rates.
No examples? I have some there for you, just shout them out.
Credit.
Credit risk? Is that external?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, credit risk. Any others?
Competition.
Yeah, competition, of course.
Mhm.
Any others?
Natural disasters?
Natural disasters, of course. Where do we have our most recent catastrophic situation in the world?
Turkey?
Turkey. How many people are estimated to have died?
Millions.
Not millions, but it may as well have been
Oh,
at least 40,000 so far.
okay.
Imagine 40,000. I mean, 300 people in a place looks like the world is coming to an end. Imagine 40,000 estimated. My. Yeah. Why is board composition an external risk? Board composition. What does that even mean?
Like you have to know the characters of the persons you appoint to be on your board.
No question. No, Donald, who said that?
Major.
Yes, Sophia. Don't be bashful. Yes. You have to know as far as possible the character of the people who are on your boards. Why is that important from a risk perspective, anyone? This is serious stuff. You have to know who you're marrying, right, everyone? Okay, let's move about from the board composition for a minute. Personal, your home composition. Isn't it important to know who you're marrying?
Definitely.
After all, that person is going to be involved in your personal affairs, your life affairs. They're going to be in your bed. If you can't flick and trust that person, what happens then? Well, history has shown. Anybody saw the murder case recently?
Yes.
Yes.
What did Murdoch do?
Killed his wife and son.
22-year-old son.
Mhm.
Imagine that. Talk about risk. And they sleep in the same bed. His child. Man, not that killing wives and children and spouses is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. It's just that, you know, it continues to be horrid. And the risk around these things continues to thrive. That's why this issue of risk, man, all the other topics are important, but this risk topic, yeah, it's my foot. Anyway, yeah, killed his wife and son. Most recent horror of all the horrors that occur every single day. The risk, there's everywhere you go, some madness. Okay, so where did I come from? Well, board composition. See my point? Same principle. You have to know who's sitting on your board. Is somebody sitting on your board sitting on another board that's competing with your company? See my point? Is somebody sitting on your board involved with somebody from another board who's their friend, girlfriend, boyfriend, something? Trading secrets that's going on your board. How do you know? You say board composition. The other thing is a lot of people like to put people on boards who they know, who they're related to, they're friends. And so you can't make an independent decision because everybody happens to be a buddy of somebody, a girlfriend, somebody, boyfriend, hanging out, sweetheart, whatever it is on the board. So you can't make a constructive decision because there's nobody to object. External risk. So I've given you guys a long list of risk issues. You can have a look at that. And if you see one that you're not sure on, you can ask me, well, Mr. Wilkinson, what does that risk mean? But I can assure you the financial risks, strategic risks are long-term, and the hazard risks, these are all entity risks that exist in every organization in one form or another. And any company that's not considering them, and many of them don't, until something happens. Okay? Like natural events, natural disasters, a lot of us don't consider that from a company perspective. Until there's an earthquake, and then we discover then that there's no earthquake insurance. There's no natural disaster insurance because we never thought it would hit Turkey. Whatever the reason is, we don't think about it. And if we think about it, it'll never happen here. Systems risk. Can anybody say what a systems risk is? What do you think that is?
Maybe in some companies like banks, there are still some that have old operational systems. So
Right.
that the risk of mistakes or, the length of the transaction actually occurring because of the antiquated systems that's still being used.
Yes, absolutely. Couldn't have put it better myself. Those legacy problems, old systems, things that don't work anymore too well in a modern environment. Yet nobody's changing anything. They don't want to spend the money. They don't want to take the time. They don't want to go through the pain and suffering of making the change. Whenever that happens, we have to consider, what do we risk by not doing it? Okay. Yeah, sure. We know it's going to cost X, Y, and Z by doing it. If people have to work overtime, there's going to be some big pain and suffering making the transition. But what is the risk of not doing it? Is it a greater risk? And oftentimes with systems and structures, there is a greater risk of not doing it, not making the changes. One of the main reasons why entities and people and countries don't like to change things, because they don't want to go through the pain, the cost, and the headache of doing it. Plus, sometimes making changes means that persons who are benefiting from the old system will no longer benefit. And just to make sure that their buddies and friends and families and them, whatever the hell they're doing, continues to benefit, they leave the old thing in place, the old system, so that they can continue to benefit, because the new system will find them out or shut it down. My mind. All I can say is, anybody who dares to underestimate the issue of risk and risk management, as we see every day. I read in the newspaper last week, some guy in Abaco was speeding, ran into a wall and died instantly. What do you think was the reason why he died instantly, folks? Another young man, let me put it that way. Why did he die instantly? He ran into a wall. He was doing what?
He
Speeding.
probably didn't have on his seatbelt, but I'm thinking even with the seatbelt on, he ran into a wall, he may have died anyway.
What do you think? Yes, you're absolutely right. And what would have been the underlying reason, even with the seatbelt?
Hit his head to the steering wheel.
Speed.
Okay, getting warm, what would be the underlying reason no matter what? Starts with S.
Speed.
Speed.
Oh.
Let me tell you a secret. If you're making normal speed and you hit a wall, chances are will not kill the average person. True or false?
True.
I can assure you, the way I drive, if I hit a wall, it'll never kill me. I'll die from a heart attack first, because I don't drive that fast. The problem is, we keep breaking the speed limit and hoping for a different result. All the time. Sometimes those of us who are in the speed limit are hit by people who are breaking the speed limit. And guess what? They walk away and we are
Injured or dead.
injured or dead.
Unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah. Imagine that. We are in the speed limit. They're breaking it. They walk away and we are injured or dead. Risk stinks. Unnecessary risk stinks absolutely. External risks. So if you spot an external risk that you're not clear on, you can always say, Mr. Wilkinson, what the hell is that risk? I mean, you can Google it and see if you can figure it out. But if you can't figure it out, what is that external risk? I don't get it. but it's a long list. And somewhere along the line, entities and others are constantly affected by one, more, or all. Imagine that. Then there are the internal risks. Okay. Can somebody read that list of internal risks that could affect the firm that you work for, that you guys work for? Somebody read the list. Internal risks.
Liquidity and cash flow,
Yep.
research and development,
Mhm.
intellectual capital, accounting controls, information systems, recruitment, supply chains, public access, employees, properties, product and services.
Wow. I mean, under normal conditions, like we wouldn't even be thinking about these things. Just man, I have to get the stuff off my desk. I'm tired of this bloody place anyway. I need to go home. Who was trying to think about all these internal risk issues? Well, believe it or not, who do you think the primary people are for considering all of these internal and external risks class? Who should be leading the charge on internal and external risks? In the firm, where you work even. Who should be leading the charge?
Is it the executive management?
Meaning, which group of the executive management?
The CEOs and I guess the decision-making person?
Yes, for sure. The decision-making persons. I'm glad you put it that way because you leave the door open for me to ask this. Who in the company is responsible for the strategic and long-term management of the firm? Any firm, including the ones you work for, you guys.
The board of directors?
Yes, thank you very much. The board of directors. They are responsible for the long-term strategic management of the firm. They are responsible ultimately for making sure that these external and internal risks are being given attention. They do not do the work. They hire people to do them, but they're responsible for making sure they're done ultimately. Though it doesn't always appear that way because they're so busy having fun, eating caviar and flying off to. Who appoints the board?
Shareholders.
The shareholders, yes. Who are the ultimate owners of the firm?
Shareholders.
Yes. And who's responsible in the firm for making sure that the day-to-day instructions from the board are carried out?
I need you.
Who's responsible for making sure that the board instructions are carried out?
I guess the line,
The who?
the line manager.
Specifically who?
Managing director.
The CEO or the managing director.
Yeah, the CEO and managing director, the COO and any other Cs along the way, senior management, those people. And then the rest of you and us and the rest of us down the line are the ones who actually execute from day to day. That's how a typical firm ought to work. Key point here is ensuring that internal and external risk are actually dealt with is the job of the board, but they do this through the senior management who will do it to the rest of the staff, or should be, okay? So these issues of internal risk, liquidity, anybody knows what liquidity is? Liquidity.
Is that how easily a company can turn assets into cash?
That's certainly one form of liquidity, how easily you can turn assets into cash, or simply having enough cash flow available to pay for what you need to pay when you need to pay it.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're not managing your cash, you might find that bills and expenses, etc., might come up and you don't have the money to pay because you're not managing your cash properly. That is a risk issue. Many small businesses suffer from that a lot. Sometimes they mismanage their money so poorly that sometimes they can't even meet the weekly payroll. They have to go to the bank for an overdraft if they can get one to pay the salaries. And if you're running a business and running into trouble meeting weekly payroll, you have a very serious cash flow problem. Welcome to risk. And then it gets sophisticated, other types of risks. Research and development, are you coming up with enough new products for your company to grow? Is your intellectual capital protected? Do you have accounting controls in place so that people don't steal assets, including cash from the company? Is your IT system, are they working and secure? See? What about your recruitment policy? Are you hiring the right people? Is your turnover high or low? Is your supply chain in order? Do you only have one supplier or do you have sufficient? What happens what's the risk of having one supplier? Sorry? What happens if you only have one supplier?
In any instance where that one particular supplier is unable to actually execute, then it affects your business, your production.
Oh, no question about it. Ideally, when it comes to the supply chain, you should have at least what? To minimize your risk. Ideally, you should have a minimum of how many vendors to minimize your risk.
I'd say 2 or 3.
At least 2 or more. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, for sure. Public access, are your assets and your entity secure? Are your employees satisfied? Are they motivated? Are they being paid sufficient? Are they in and out? Do they stay with you long enough or only for short periods of time? All of these are risk issues. Employee turnover is a very expensive exercise, by the way. And oftentimes when employees leave, they take the skills they get from your organization to another organization. All kinds of risk issues. For sure. And not to mention products and services are at the bottom, but that doesn't mean that they're unimportant or last. They're just there. But products and services are key. Without the proper products and services, your entity is in trouble. Your doors will eventually close. Quite as simple as that. I don't care how well you're doing all the other risk issues. If your products and services do not meet what clients expect, price-wise and otherwise and service-wise, sooner or later, they're going to stop using your product or service. And of course, you know, when clients stop doing that, if you don't find a way to get them back, you will be closing your doors, whoever we are. Okay?
So
All right.
that one would be considering what, security or what exactly?
Say it again.
Properties as an internal risk.
Oh yeah, properties. Why would properties be an internal risk? That's a good question. Make a guess.
Sometimes it's better to rent or lease, depending on the type of business you're in, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great out of the box thought. A lot of people don't think about that aspect of it. Sometimes it's better to rent rather than lease, whether it's company or personal. Some people never get a mortgage in their lives at all. They just rent because they don't want to deal with a mortgage payment. They don't want to deal with insurance. They don't want to deal with all the problem maintenance of a home. They don't want to deal with any of that stuff. So they say, you know what? The hell with it. Besides, in 20 years, the children are going to be gone anyway. And then we're stuck with this doggone building that we have to walk up and down in or sell, which is not always a bad idea because getting a home is also an investment. getting a home is a place where generations of children, because I know some families, they want the father and mother die off, the children live there, and then they die off, and their children kind of like that. So that's that's an option. Nobody has to buy a new house. But on the other hand, some people like, I'm not going through the misery of owning a home. I'll just rent. So yes, you're absolutely right. Whether the lease or rent is definitely a risk question. And every entity, individual has to determine that based on their own circumstances. For sure.
Okay.
I think somebody mentioned insurance, of course. You don't want to have company property, for example, any property that is not properly or minimally insured against whatever hazards there might be. Okay, definitely. So a lot of things on the list to think about, and any organization that doesn't have someone or some group in the organization who's not thinking about these things are opening themselves up to major risks. A lot of companies, as do individuals, we like to leave things open, and when something happens, then we rush to fix it. We first see who we could blame, then we say, okay, we'll fix it until the next time, rather than looking at it in advance and saying, what do we need to do in order to mitigate or try to avoid this kind of risk? Way to go. And the big thing about risk management is thinking out the box, not just what you see on the paper, but sitting down and actually thinking, what other things do we need to consider as far as our firm, or if it's an individual or other entity, what do we need to consider doing? All right. So now, having said all of those things in principle, we can now move on to the next P, which is process. Because principle without process means nothing gets done. For those of you who still believe in the Bible, faith without works is
Dead.
absolutely. Doggone it. So my pension is safe with you guys, and the Bible is still safe with you guys. Because a lot of people are now running away and hiding from the Bible in the US and other parts of the world. And as you know, Bahamians, we like to copy. So eventually, I guess some of us will be doing the same nonsense. That's my opinion as well. But yes, we're now into the process of things. So now we're taking our principles that we talked about so far, and we're putting it to work. So what is the process of managing risk? Well, as you can see, there's a long list on page 4 of the things that exist in managing the risk process. Okay. We have to look at the organization and its objectives. We have to make an assessment. What does making an assessment mean, anyone? Making an assessment. Anybody ever assessed anything recently? Okay, let me just take it out of the firm and make it personal, see if we can do that. Okay. Who was the person who was bold enough to say they were married again? Speak up. I'll tell you why after you speak up.
Okay, I guess I get it.
Okay, Sophia. Sophia. That I like that, Sophia. That's cute. She said, you know what? Okay, since you flicking insist, I'll say me. Okay, Sophia. Here's what. Kudos to you for being bold enough to say it. Here's why I asked. Before you got married, you did an assessment of your spouse to be, correct?
Correct.
I hope so. We didn't just like, let's do it. The hell with all the other details.
No,
That. You made an assessment. Is this person right for me? Are they likely to stay with me? When I have 2 children and I'm not as shapely as I used to be, they'll still love me. Whatever the assessment is. Okay, because that's what it's all about. The point is, the assessment, when you do that in terms of deciding whether to marry somebody, that's like making a risk assessment in the firm. If your answers to those things are not positive sufficiently, chances are you shouldn't marry that person. That's the whole point. when you do a risk assessment in the firm, and you see all kinds of things out of place, then somebody has to sit down to fix them. Not like, oh, they're there and we'll see what happens. We don't have anybody to do it. I don't want to do it. Who's going to do it? Let's not do it. It's too expensive to do it. Whatever the hell it is, it's assessed and never done. So you have two risk problems. One, not doing the assessment at all. No time to assess anything. We're all busy. That hell needs to assess anything. And then those companies who are bold enough to do an assessment, then they have to decide, we don't have anybody to make this work. We don't have any extra money to hire. We don't have anybody available to do it. We don't have anybody qualified to do it. We don't, if we do an assessment, then we have to show our shortcomings. Our shortcomings might show that some of us are up doing stuff that we shouldn't do, up to no good. Whatever the reason, so the assessment stays in limbo. And so suddenly you can't go any further in the process. You go from, yes, the organization needs it. It is a strategic objective and decision to do a risk management process. And then you get to risk assessment, you get stuck there, nobody moves from there. And if you don't move from there, the rest on the list don't get done. Common problem. Wow. Common problem. But let's say you're bold enough to do the risk assessment reasonably well. Then you can go on to the other steps in the process. Once you do assessment, then you analyze the situation. Break it down into its parts, see what needs to be done. Identify the real problems. Create a description of the issues that need to be dealt with, and do an evaluation of what needs to be done, where, why, and by whom. And of course, let's not forget the risk reporting process, because the board needs to know. See, the board. Anybody knows why the board needs to know about this process, this assessment, this evaluation? Why does the board need to know?
Because they're the ultimate decision makers, so they're the ones that are gonna have to make the final decisions on the company's operation.
Absolutely. The board is the ultimate decision maker in these issues. The board will have to give approval. The board will have to provide the money and resources in order to get it done. The board will have to be persuaded that it's necessary to in the first place. Sometimes these reports go to the board and they don't bring it to the table for one reason or another. Then you have to go back and remind the board. And some boards don't like to be reminded. And if you keep reminding them, they might remind you that they're tired of hearing you remind them. Is that possible? Like they're tired of hearing you remind them? Maybe you guys may not know because you've not had enough interaction with boards at that level. But because people are charged with responsibility doesn't mean they're always doing it. Doesn't mean they always want to do it. And they're not, doesn't mean that they're interested in you telling them that they should be doing it. Mr. Compliance Officer, Miss MLRO, Miss Risk Management Person, whoever you are. Mr. or Miss Employee, who the hell are you? And here are you. We're doing it in good faith, Mr. Board, for the sake of the company. I said, what the hell? We paid for these people to go to school to give us cheek about what we ought to be doing. Who gave them the authority to recommend anything? Well, tell Ms. Sunshine, thank you very much, but keep her recommendations to herself. We'll decide what's going to be done as far as risk is concerned. What do you do then? You go back and say, dear board members, I would like to remind you that the compliance officer risk manager is responsible for overseeing the risk issues in the firm and ensuring that we mitigate and reduce the risk as much as possible. I've said to you on many occasions that there are some very serious matters outstanding that require your attention and resources necessary to resolve them before we end up with major problems. Who's bold enough to do that? You have to be bold. Even though being bold is sometimes a risk. Ah, boy. You just can't get around it. See my point? Now, each of you in this class will have to decide at some point in the future what risks you're going to take or not, and why. And remember, not choosing to take the risk doesn't mean that that's the right decision. And choosing to take the risk doesn't mean that's the right decision either. If I've confused the issue, that's the whole point, since that's the nature of risk. You have to use your good sense, your moral structure, and your experience and your gut to help you through the process, in case you haven't figured that out yet. And just when you figure out one that type of risk situation, others keep coming. In my mind. What about threats and opportunities? Why is that in the process, anyone?
I think it's really evaluating, seeing where there may be cons within the business or the firm, and then where there's room for growth.
Yes, absolutely. Look to see if there's anything out there that's threatening the well-being of the firm, or anything out there that can help the organization to grow or do things better. Absolutely. Somebody should be looking at those things. By all means. Okay, by all means. And that should be an ongoing issue that is initiated by the board. And it's their job to get senior management to get on board. And it's senior management's job to encourage everybody down the line to keep those issues concerning the firm at the forefront. After all, if you're successful in doing that stuff, everybody benefits. However, if you're not, everybody suffers in one form or another. If only risk issues could be simpler. Well, some of us simplify by doing nothing. Some of us simplify by doing the minimum, but that doesn't mean that's the appropriate approach to take. Since risk management process involves some serious issues, like, in addition to that list, that is the basic structure of the process, it involves decision making. Decision making is never easy. If it's a simple decision, fine. Should I spend $5 or 10? Easy decision. Let me ask you guys something, financial planners, future financial planners. How much do you think Bahamians spend per week on lunch? Anyone? Make a guess. Average.
$100.
$100.
$100. Yeah. No, that's a good average. $20 a day, somewhere along the way. So some of us spend $20 for lunch alone. Some of us spend 10 for breakfast and 10 for lunch, or some variation. And so on average, yeah. And in some cases, it could be more. Because some of us like exotic breakfast and exotic lunches. But on average, $100 a week just to eat, which is $400 a month, which is $5,000 a year. And that's because eating is a necessary evil. We have to eat. A lot of us don't have to be as extravagant in our eating, but some of us can afford to do it. Others of us cannot afford to do it, but we still want to do it because we want a little extravagance in our lives like other people. And then, so again, what am I saying? Decisions, decisions, decisions. That's what the risk management process is all about. That long list of the steps we take in order to get to the end of the day to make the right decision. See my point? And the right decision is about how we're going to treat the risk once we figure out what it is. And once we figure out how we're going to treat it, who are we going to report it to? Should we just tell the board, senior management? Should everybody in the firm know? Does everybody in the firm need to know? Well, it depends on the risk. And who's in charge of monitoring? What does monitoring mean, anyone? What does monitoring mean, anyone? When we monitor something, what do we do?
Like overseeing those high risk areas or those areas that we identified that may need.
Absolutely. Overseeing the whole process to see if things are going according to plan. Yes. Why do we monitor our children? Are we monitoring to see if things are going according to plan? Are we monitoring them to minimize risk? Are we?
Minimize risk, protection.
Yeah. Yeah, keeping them protection is a risk issue. If we don't protect them, then we run the risk of them getting seriously hurt or losing them. Of course. That's why we monitor them. That's why if you have a child or children, they get quiet, you start checking to see where they are because they might be drinking bleach, right? Right, class?
Yes.
Yeah. Or they might be climbing up on something and if they fall, they break their bloody necks. So we should always be checking for them. One of the things I was so happy about when my children finally grew up and became adults is that I didn't have to monitor them 24/7 anymore. Does that mean that I'm free of worrying about them? Hell no, I'm not free of them, but I'm free of monitoring them 24/7. Being a parent stinks. When I say stinks, I don't mean it stinks. I love it. I'm just using that for emphasis. Monitoring, always. And now that they're men, I still monitor them now and then I check it. How's everything, guys? Oh, Dad, we're fine. I'm like, oh, thank God. Kind of thing. So that's what monitoring is all about. It's an ongoing process. In the case of firms, it should be ongoing. Somebody should be responsible for it. And when things are not going according to plan, they should have somebody to report it to, like the board, and senior management, somebody can do something about it. Sophia. Sophia.
Hello, hi, sorry.
That's okay. I'm picking on you because you were bold enough to say you're married. So I have another question for you, Sophia.
Okay.
Do you monitor your spouse?
Um,
Somebody has to be the other
not
side.
really,
Not really. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Because
no.
basically he should be old enough to.
Yeah, right, the standards he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
holding.
Yeah. I mean, maybe not intensely like little light monitoring. Like if he normally comes home at 6 and he comes home at 7, then little monitoring, like how come you just got home? That's monitoring, but it's not intense, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I mean, I've been married for decades, and if I'm off my normal time, my wife still says, "What happened?" I'm like, "What? What happened?" I'm like, "Nothing." But yeah, she's still doing a little monitoring. I'm like, "Aren't we a little too old to be monitoring?" She said, "No, I just was checking." I'm like, "Okay." Not that I mind, because guess what? Not monitoring is also a problem. Just like in the firm. If you're not monitoring, sooner or later you run into something. Same as other situations. Too much monitoring stinks, but too little or none is another kind of problem. See, they create risks on both sides. You just have to come up with the sufficiency to make sure you keep your risk to a minimum. That's the whole point. Wow. Man, this risk thing stinks. Just when you think you're done, there's more stuff to consider. And that's how it is. That's why a lot of firms and people don't mess with it, because it is all encompassing and it never goes away. Ever. My. Does anybody remember when Donald Trump's ex-wife fell down the steps? Anybody remember that?
No.
No? You guys only read the papers sometimes then. Okay. Yeah. His first wife from long ago, Ivanka or whatever. She's a senior citizen like Donald. It's around the same age, late 60s, 87, whatever. A couple of months ago, last year, she fell down the steps and must have broken her neck or died from her injuries. And the only reason why I said that is because we're never free of the risk of danger of some kind. We just keep taking steps to try and mitigate it, individually, entity-wise, country-wise, worldwide. That's the whole thing. Okay. It's not like, thank God, I've checked all the boxes in the risk box and we've done everything we're supposed to do. We're free of risk. Man, that risk doesn't work out. And any firm or individual otherwise who thinks so are headed for trouble. Okay. Now, accidents happen and we may wonder, well, why did Ivanka fall down the steps? She slipped. She's an old lady. She didn't hold on the rail. She thought she could walk without holding. Who knows what happened? We don't know. Could be that she didn't take the mitigating steps to avoid falling down the steps. Could be that she did, but she still just tripped and had an accident. What? See, it's kind of, that's welcome to the world of risk. It's never a perfect situation, ever. We just keep trying to keep it to a plausible minimum. All right. So now we into the third phase of the risk process called risk assessment. And it's important to know that under the risk assessment phase, we consider two aspects. One, anybody knows what they are? What are the two aspects of risk assessment? It's right there on page 4 at the bottom.
Risk analysis and evaluation.
Yes, risk analysis and risk evaluation. Both of them fall under the assessment part of things. I don't know, folks, about how important assessing things are, but assessing anything is a critical part of anything. Okay, no question about it. I've been an adjunct lecturer and professor for, man, I'll just say 30 plus years. I won't say anything more than that. I've taught at the University of the Bahamas, including when it was COB back in the day. I've taught with NOVA. I've taught most of the tertiary institutions in the Bahamas, of course, with this forever. So I've done in many subject areas, professionally and academically. And an important part of that process has always been the assessment side of things. How are students doing? What are they doing to get this information in their soul? How are they preparing for examinations? Are they putting in sufficient time? All of these are assessment issues. If they have questions, do we answer them? How do we encourage them to be diligent in their studies? All of these are assessment issues if we want to be bothered. All of these can be a problem if we don't want to be bothered with assessment, because assessment involves a lot of work. And so when I hear that students in the Bahamas, for example, are still graduating from high school and some of them can hardly read, have you heard that, students? Anybody ever heard that? There are students in the Bahamas who are graduating from high school and they cannot read properly.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah, yes, Paula. And how the hell did that happen? Sorry.
Social promotion.
I just say that for emphasis. Yeah, social promotion. But social promotion is just a, can't use that word, an expression for not properly doing the assessment by the institution responsible for education, correct?
Yes.
Am I the only genius in the room, class? Or this is just something that we all should know by now, by the 21st century? Students, let me tell you something. I don't know what you guys do with your children, because part of it is parents' responsibility as well. Part of it is the school. But once upon a time, a million years ago, when I went to school, we did a phenomenal thing in class when we were from class 1, grade 1, straight up to high school, certainly up to grade 6, and maybe up to grade 9, depending on the teacher you had. And here's what they did. Grade 1. Samuel, stand up and read. You ever heard that, class students? Ever heard that?
Yes.
Yeah. Maricel, stand up and read. Vonette, Paula. Grade 3, stand up and read. See, the reason for that was if you had any reading deficiencies, the teacher would know sooner or later, true or false.
True.
That's called an assessment. Then they take remedial steps by saying, Samuel, your reading is not up to standard. See me after class for reading what? Reading practice.
Class.
So for 1 hour after school, when parents come or whatever, or don't come, Samuel is in front of Miss Jones reading. So that by the time he or anybody else gets to high school and graduate, reading is not an issue. So it's not really the child's fault. The children are not going to take the initiative to do that crap. They're children. It's a system. They'll not take the time to do the A word. What's the A word, class? Assess.
Assessment.
Same thing with organizations. Nobody wants to take the time to properly assess risk. Assess why a staff member is underperforming. Assess. Bloody cess. Sorry, I just said that so you could remember. But it is important. And therein lies the problem for many situations of companies, homes, schools, and life. Assessment. We don't want to take the time. We're too busy making money. We're too busy doing this. We're too busy doing that. School is responsible for whether our children know how to read or not. I don't have no 15 minutes to listen to Johnny read. And I send him to school. A stinking school do it. Private school too. In the meantime, any student who graduates school and can't read properly, they suffer at the end of the day. Because nobody says it's the system's fault. It says Johnny or Mary are dumb. Y'all can't freaking read as if it's their fault. And they get mad. Mary cries, Johnny burns something down because he's angry. Shoot someone. Why can't I read? And he gets mad, embarrassed, pissed. See my point? Assessment. My. Okay. So under the assessment, we have risk analysis, breaking the problem down, the risk issues, and then evaluating them to determine what needs to be done. Okay. So under risk analysis, we identify the risk, we describe it. Notice I have a whole laundry list of risk ID issues. Like, who has time to go through a laundry list? Nobody. Probably why a lot of times the risk is not assessed anyway until something happens. Name the risk. How far does the risk extend? What is the nature of the risk? Who are the stakeholders involved? Can we quantify it? Are there any qualitative issues? What is our tolerance for risk? What is our appetite? Do we welcome risk or do we hate it? How do we treat it? How do we control it? What action should we take to improve risk mitigation? What strategy and policy should we put in place? And who should we tell? See all of that? Risk ID. All that is part of the analysis. Imagine that. For all the types of risks within the firm. And then, as part of the description process, identification process, we have to do some estimating. See, assessment. It's my assessment. No wonder nobody wants to deal with assessment. Too much work. Like, oh, if it's sit behind with Frankie, that's not even my child, to sit down so I can make sure he reads properly. That's not my job. Let the parents do it. Then the parents say, let the school do it. And the school said, let the parents do it. And then in the middle is poor Johnny or Mary, suffering at the hands of adults who brought them into the mess Ah, talk about risk. Children run the risk of coming into the world to parents who don't give up. Who wants to finish that? I know it's a serious joke. If it wasn't so serious, it would be a joke. Kiss my foot. All right. So in assessing, we identify the risks, all the little bits and pieces. And in identifying the risk, we come up with estimations. What is an estimate? Just like some guesswork. Okay. Is this risk quantitative? Can we put numbers to it? To any extent? Is it qualitative? Is it something that we can't put numbers to? It's just morally right or wrong? What is the probability that it might happen? 10%, 50, 70, 90% based on its history? What is it? These are all estimations. And they're estimations because they're not scientifically 100% known. And even scientifically 100% things are not always known. We just think it's 100%. Estimations. Okay. Wow. Man, this is crazy. Who would have thought that all this crazy stuff would be involved in risk management? Why we don't just pay the insurance and it's over? Premium. Not that simple. A lot of companies have gone down in flames because they're not looking at these things. A lot of companies continue in business, but they lose a lot of money and don't do as well as they can because of these things. A lot of companies lose significant profits because of these things. A lot of companies lose good people because of these things, not doing these things. Because they don't even consider the risk associated with ignoring personnel, the risk associated with turnover in the firm. A lot of firms don't even think about that. And if they're big enough, they don't care. You want to go? Carry your tail. And they don't even stop to think about the cost of it. We're big enough, we can absorb it. But smaller firms have another problem. It's costly for them. So instead of profits being better in 1 year, it's worse because they don't consider these things. And so if you notice in my risk estimation note, I have a little equation, a risk estimation equation. Anybody sees the equation? It says consequences equals.
Both threats and opportunities.
Yes. Consequences equal threats and opportunities. So whether it's good or bad, those are the consequences that should be in our minds as we consider risk. Okay? And notice typically in the real world, when we look at risk consequences, we typically look at 3 categories. There can be others, but we typically look at 3. And I have the 3 key ones here for you. All right, the first one is high or probable. The next one is medium or possible. And the other is low or remote. What do you mean by remote? Low and remote, what does that mean?
Less likely to happen, I guess you can.
Yeah, less likely to happen, absolutely. As opposed to high, which means that there's not a guarantee it'll happen, but it's a greater probability that it would. And then, of course, Mr. Medium, as usual, where we all like to be in the middle. It's possible, it might, let's see what we need to do. Okay? These are the things that we should be swirling around in the mind of boards and anybody who's responsible for risk management, which is everybody in one form or another. Even the person at the lowest levels in the organization has some responsibility for risk. If the janitor sees that the floor is slippery after they finish mopping it, what is the risk there? Should the janitor report it? Should the janitor report it? The floor is slippery after mopping. Should that be reported?
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
Why?
There's a risk someone may fall and get hurt.
And therefore, They keep going. The problem doesn't just stop at fall and get hurt. Wouldn't that be great? They fell and got hurt. Full stop. Matter over.
Lawsuit.
Lawsuit. See that? Lawsuit. That in some countries like the US can cost the company how much? How much?
Everything.
Millions. Only in the Bahamas you could fall out and break your neck and can't get $10. Can't even get to court. But you fall down in places like the US and Europe, you could sue for millions just for falling down on a slippery floor. How about that? So you have a lawsuit, you have an employee who's injured and therefore away from work, which means you have to replace that employee with someone else, train them. The employee is on long-term disability plus collecting a couple million. Plus you're obligated to hire them back, and if you don't, you can be sued for discrimination. My. Just when we thought risk management was just something you swept into the corner and give to the clerk. It is not. Risk management in your firm is very serious business. Risk management in your home is very serious business. Risk management on a country level is very serious business. Risk management on a global level is even more serious, trying to avoid a third world war. That's some serious risk management. Not to mention we already had 2 world wars before. So in terms of high, medium, or low, which category is that in, class?
Hi,
High, why?
this is very probable.
Why, based on what? You're right.
So we already had 2 before.
Yeah, we already had 2 flicking world wars before, one currently going on, and we've been warring from the beginning of time. Absolutely. Why should we not presume it's not high? We can get up any day, like, Third World War. Then we have to go wake up Sir Winston Churchill from the dead and ask him what to do in a nuclear war. My. Oh, Mr. Wilkinson, isn't that a bit extreme? Certainly not, students. And if there's anybody in this class who think it's naive, it's strange you are naive, because it could happen in your lifetime. So welcome to risk. Just when we think the discussion is over, something new crops up. So what about risk analysis and techniques? Okay. I need a reader. Who can read that for me? Risk analysis, part of the assessment still, risk analysis and techniques. Can somebody pick that up? A range of techniques.
A range of techniques can be used to analyze risk. These can be specific to upside or downside risk, or be capable of dealing with both.
Keep going.
Risk profile. The result of the risk analysis process can be used to produce a risk profile which gives a significance rating to each risk and provides a tool for prioritizing risk treatment efforts. This ranks each identified risk so as to give a view of the relative importance.
Keep going. Risk evaluation.
Risk evaluation. Compare the estimated risk against risk criteria which the company has established. The risk criteria may include associated costs and benefits, legal requirements, socioeconomic and environmental factors, concerns, or stakeholders, etc. Risk evaluation, therefore, is used to make decisions about the significance of risk to the organization and whether each specific risk should be accepted or treated.
Thank you very much for being bold. Absolutely. Okay. I noticed that we had 1 or 2 bold students that they just jump in and let it rip. And then Paula finally said, you know what? I'll say something, to hell with it. Okay, way to go. Because you'll certainly need to be that in one form or another, if not now, eventually. All right, so yes, the eval side of risk, the risk process is taking the analysis and looking at the details of the analysis of the breakdown of the risk and saying, should we accept this risk or should we treat this risk or should we decline this risk if possible? And that evaluation is actually critical because that leads, remember, to a decision. Remember, a lot of people break things down, get as far as the breakdown to the analysis. They even get as far as the evaluation. Then they get stuck on the most important aspect, which is the decision. And things keep getting stuck at the decision level. Any decision yet, Mr. Prime Minister? Nothing yet on the whether you're going to increase NIB. Any decision, Putin, or whether you're going to go back and stop fighting? Nothing yet, keep fighting. See? Any decision, Joe Biden, on when you're going to put prayer back in the schools? No, not at all. As a matter of fact, we're trying to get students to a point where if they think they're a girl, we don't have to report it to parents. Talk about risk. Teacher, I feel like a girl. Great. Don't tell your parents. We don't have to report it. The president supports it. This is new age America. Anybody aware of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody aware of that stuff going on in the US? No?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. It's good if you're aware because you can't even participate if you're not aware. And remember, whatever happens in the United States eventually ends up where? Taking long to answer, whatever happens in the United States eventually ends up?
In the Bahamas.
Happening.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, but that's the way it is. So you youngsters have some interesting things ahead. Chance I didn't tell you. All connected to risk because they all have serious risk implications. I said to my son, my baby was in Toronto, he's 25. I said, if you're dating a girl, you have to find out somehow if she's a real girl. What do I mean, class? Yeah, I know it's another serious joke. Absolutely. But you can't take it for granted anymore. When I was young, we knew she was a girl or a boy. Not anymore. You could actually get married to somebody and then find out afterwards that they're not a girl or they're not a boy. Imagine the risk associated with that crap. I don't apologize for saying crap because it is crap. Even if you don't believe in the Bible, it's just no common sense to it. It's pretty stupid.
Indeed.
And I'm not going to take the risk of sugarcoating it because that is a danger and creates a greater risk. It is absolute foolishness, and the risk levels in life in organizations and increases because don't think that all this crazy stuff will not impact how organizations work and run. Talk about risk assessment. My. So if you have a boy who became a girl and they're heading an organization, who do you think will get all the promotions first? All the boys who become girls?
No, all the girls.
And the girls. Yeah, all the boys who become girls and the girls. What's going to happen to the boys who remain boys? Yeah, they're going to be stuck.
Ostracized.
Yeah, absolutely.
What they call
Talk about risk issues. Welcome to risk issues.
They call it diversity.
That's something for you guys to think about outside of the normal organization risk that we discuss. Okay, very real issues. Point is, even though there may be outside typical organizational risks, people have to go to work, and therefore, whatever it is, it will ultimately impact the organization anyway, in one form or another. Or like my sweet grandma used to say, another. Yeah. All right. So we're going to stop there today. Next week, we'll pick up our discussion because I can assure you, if only risk, I think we've said enough to last us for the rest of the year. But it doesn't stop there. I have some other crazy risk issues to discuss with you. We'll pick that up next week. Did Miguel give you a case study?
Yeah, he sent it in an email.
Excellent. Please, for the next, from between now and the third class, go ahead, look at it, answer the questions, think out the box, use any business, accounting, risk information to help you respond to the questions, so that on the third week of class, we'll use probably the last hour or so to discuss the case study. Nobody's going to be right or wrong. I just want to get feedback from students on how you're thinking. Are there any risk issues associated with that case? Are there any accounting or other issues associated with that case? Just to give you that CIFP feeling of looking at the big picture potentially. Okay? So do not limit yourself in your thoughts, in your applications, and certainly at the top of your discussions and answering those questions and responding should be the issue of risk management. All right, any questions before we break? All right, wonderful. You guys have a safe week. I'll see you next Saturday, same time. All right, take care, and I'll see you then.
All right, have a good one, everyone.
Good day.
Good day.